Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hostler Show. Today, this is the first episode of 2018, so I'm really pumped up to get back into the interviews. And our guest today is Chrystin Garland. She's a visual developer working in Los Angeles in DreamWorks TV. She has worked in the Emmy Award Winning Niko and the Sword of Light, and also she's been working in the Steven Universe. So welcome, Chrystin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So first of all, can you tell us a little bit your history? How did you get started into art, and what was that called you into this profession?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so I've pretty much always remembered myself really liking to draw. Whenever I was a kid, my parents realized that if they gave me a paper and pen or some markers, I would be quiet, right? So it was a kind of a glorified babysitter. And as I got older, I was really lucky to have a group of friends who really loved art as well. And so we would always have these little sketchbooks, and I still have them to this day, where we would pass them around and we would all draw. And through that, I had several friends who I thought were just so amazing, and I wanted to get to their level, you know, so it was that healthy competition going on. And yeah, I didn't really realize that I wanted to get into animation until high school, because before then I was really into comics and just reading up on, you know, like Sailor Moon and Mars and all those, like manga was huge back then. You know, we had Inuyasha and Ranma Half and all that, so I loved it. But then I was able to go to a summer camp at Academy of Art University and take a couple of courses in traditional animation. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like you can make your pictures move, and it blew my mind. So I said, this is what I want to do for sure. And I eventually went to Savannah College of Art and Design. And stop me if I'm speaking too fast.
Don't worry, I love it.
I'm just giving like my whole entire story here. But I eventually went to school at Savannah College of Art and Design, studying traditional animation. But while I was there, I was really fortunate to be able to take some sequential art classes at the same time. So I was, not only was I learning about motion and storytelling, but I was also able to get some really great foundations in the sequential art department that only helped my animation career. Unfortunately, when I graduated, that was in the middle of the recession. That was right when Princess and the Frog had come out, and we all thought traditional animation was on the up and up, you know. And I thought, oh, my job is secure, it's going to be great, but that did not happen. So, so as anyone who's faced with that sort of situation, I just learned to pivot. And this is something that I always try to emphasize to younger students just breaking into the industry, or younger artists trying to break through. I really try to say, it's okay to have a focus, but you should always be able to pivot to different fields if possible, because that's only going to open you up to new jobs, right? So I sat down and I was thinking, okay, well, I enjoy drawing. What can I do to get a job in art? And I eventually decided that illustration would help out. So I was learning a lot of digital classes and taking a lot of digital courses in order to beef up my digital painting skills in Photoshop, because I had no background in that. And luckily, I was able to meet Kazuki Buishi and work on the Amulet series, which is coming out. A new book of theirs is coming out soon, so I'm really excited for them, because he's about to wrap up that series. And I was able to move into comics, and that's when I was able to work with Boom Studios, doing covers for series like Adventure Time and Bee and Puppy Cat, and eventually that led me to work on Steven Universe and the Crystal Gems miniseries. So that was super fun. And after that, I got a call from DreamWorks Television, and I was able to work on Harvey Street Kids and She-Ra. So that's my long-winded version of how I got here. Thank you.
And something that you just mentioned, like, this is always like the path I see, like the most common path that artists start like doing this thing from very young age. However, there is like a difference that happened with me, that it was that the same as you, like if I had like a pencil and and a piece of paper, I will be quiet. Like I will get so much in trouble in school because I was always drawing. Like my fathers will take my books in college and see, and there was like drawings on the side, and I always got in problem because I didn't put attention. And luckily for me, this wasn't the time where Adderall or certain drugs were like like the thing.
Mhm.
But for me, drawing was more a way of like kind of relaxing and getting the stress off
Mhm.
for many years. And I didn't understood that. I don't think I had back then like the self-awareness to understand that it was just like for me a hobby and a stress release. And when I tried to take it onto making it a career and a living out of it, and then it turns into a work, into a job that you have to do, I realized that, oh shit, like this is not like what I envisioned. Like all the reasons why I love drawing are gone if this is like an actual job with responsibilities, because now in a job like it's like, oh, I'm blocked creatively. Like your boss is not going to care about that. So how was it for you, like to know that you actually had the talent to make it a job and not, like in my case, to separate from that?
Oh no, definitely for me, I was never the best artist, or at least I always thought so. I was lucky to be surrounded by such supportive friends and family members, and it's funny because when I go back and I look at old drawings that I did as a kid, like I didn't understand anatomy at all or proportions, so I would, and I was obsessed with anime and manga at the time, right? So I would sit down and try and break down how those characters were illustrated without understanding that those characters are based off of natural proportions, that you need to have strong foundations first before you start distorting things and breaking the rules, right? You need to learn the rules before you break them. So yeah, I was awful. I would have like characters with like eyes that were up here, and I would always draw it like at a slant because I never was taught like that flipping rule. Like you can flip your image against a mirror or a light to see mistakes easier. Yeah, I guess I was just incredibly lucky to be surrounded by supportive people who saw something in me that I could one day be decent. So, it's just kind of blind ambition at that point. Art was what I loved to do and how I could express myself the most. And being surrounded by really positive people helped nurture that.
By the way, now that you mentioned manga and anime, this was like a big thing for me as well, especially when I got my first computer and when I first put internet. This was like the modem era, so where you had to plug your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And like, funny of this, like I had really by luck of getting really bad teachers through all my life in my institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And English teachers, like I never had a good one. So for me, it is funny because people ask me, "How did you learn English?" And it was like, "Oh, my teacher was Rurouni Kenshin," like the manga, because in the internet, like back then, it was a new thing. I could get like the pages scan, like the scans of all the comics on all the manga series of Rurouni Kenshin and series like that, but they weren't in Spanish because the internet was new, so it was only in English. And you had me with like a huge dictionary, like next to the side, trying to decipher what the word meant, and that's how I started learning English.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I always think people who are bilingual and trilingual are so interesting, because that's a skill I definitely don't have, and it must take such a long time to develop that. So I think that's super cool.
It definitely did.
And especially that you were able to receive help from translated comics. So you were kind of learning about two different cultures at the same time, because I don't know if you if Rurouni Kenshin had this, because I only watched the anime when I was younger, but a lot of dubbed and subbed anime, and even in the manga sometimes of older versions, like when Tokyo Pop was coming out with stuff, they would add in American slang to kind of get across certain phrases. And at that time, because it was the 90s, you would have characters saying as if, or whatever.
Yeah, actually it happened as well. Like the two biggest countries in the dubbing for Latin American were like Mexicans and also people from Chile. So they usually, like, the best ones were the ones that tried to keep like a neutral Spanish, but you had those moments where they will put like Mexican slang or Chilean slang into the cartoon, and it feels so weird.
Awesome.
That like inspired you the most in order to become an artist?
Oh man, I would definitely Sailor Moon for sure. And I know that's such a like a baseline, but really that was one of the first really big anime that was centered towards girls that had come out at that time. So that kind of just blew my mind. And I really loved anything by Clamp. So you had like Cardcaptor Sakura or X 1999. That was intense. And I remember watching the OVA for that. It just like my mind was blown. I really loved anything by Ayazawa, so Paradise Kiss and Nana. I always just thought the way that she drew all of her characters were beautiful because they were kind of based off of fashion models in my mind anyway. And yeah, there's so many to name. I could be here forever. I love the Samurai X OVAs. I know you mentioned Rurouni Kenshin earlier, so those were really good. And Tenchi Muyo for sure. Those are definitely like the series that defined my work, I would say, up until college. I remember being a kid and like sitting down with my comic books, and I would draw out the different eyes because I thought it was so clever and and just like and at the time it just felt like a cool thing to do, to try and figure out, okay, well, this is the shape design for this series and this is the shape design for this series, and if I want to create my own style, how can I mash these together? And it turned out to be a crazy amalgamation, but I think it helped because once I got into college and I started learning about character design for animation, I found myself in a similar situation where I was able to draw and create new characters and mess around with proportions and facial features and rendering styles. And that's something that I've carried throughout my career going forward. So yeah, things that you learn when you're young.
Yeah, definitely. Back then, I started with like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So pretty much that was that got, at least that's my first memory of me like really going into drawing and things like that. Probably something else came before that, but I don't remember it. However, I do remember that Sailor Moon was something that got me into anime because at the time it was like they started airing it into the TV. And I remember to have these initial judgments against that series because it was a girl series. And when I was a kid, I was like back then in this phase of, oh, like men must be like macho and rude and things like that, because that's pretty much how we got raised here. And then I don't remember what was the reason, but I was waiting for someone, I think, and I had to sit, and my sister was watching Sailor Moon. And in a matter of minutes, I was like laughing my ass off because it was so funny. And after that, like I was watching Sailor Moon all the days, and that was one of the initial animes. I think back then it was Saint Seiya, and again, like I didn't have like much liking to the style because compared to American cartoons like Joe's, He-Man, and Ninja Turtles, and all that, anime just look weird. But then it just got me because and one of the things was, I think, maybe a little bit the violence, because you had these old cartoons from America like G.I. Joe's, and I remember watching like all the explosions and bullets and all that, and thinking like, why does not nobody get hurt here? And then you have like the Japanese where things are pretty violent, so I was like, oh yeah, I like this.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So when you were starting, like, what are the most common mistakes that you see people when they get started, that they are making, that they are not aware that they are making as an artist?
Oh, for younger artists,
Yes.
I would definitely say the most common mistakes is the same stuff that I was doing when I was a kid, not understanding not having strong foundations, right? So there are some younger artists who don't understand anatomy too much, and you can kind of tell because their poses and stuff will be really stiff or really wonky. And another thing that I see a lot is not kids, but artists, younger artists or artists that are just starting out, who find the one thing that they like and refuse to stray from that, right? So for me, when I was starting out, I would just draw women, just women, and they would always be at this like 3/4 angle because I felt like I was good at that. And I would even hide their hands and stuff because hands were incredibly hard to draw. And I get it to a point because you want to present art that is beautiful, and art that you're comfortable with doing is the easiest way to create something that you can be proud of, right? But if you don't challenge yourself to draw different things, like in my case, I could try to draw cars or buildings more. I hated drawing backgrounds. And lo and behold, when I graduated college, my first job out of school was painting backgrounds. So suddenly I'm forced into a field, right, where I have to render the thing that I hate most. And it was buildings, and it was cars, and it was robots, and all of these things. And it just opened up an entirely new world to me. So I would say the tendency to stay within your comfort zone can be a real killer to your career. And it's always good to just have an objective view of your own work and check in with yourself every once in a while and kind of be like, okay, what could I do? Or what's something that I'm uncomfortable with that I could work on that would really bring my work to the next level? So I would say those two are definitely big ones that I see in a lot of portfolios.
Yeah, definitely on the anatomy, I seen this happen a lot in the last years, where there were these artists who were like really good and everybody was praising them on the internet, but then people found out that they were creating like original drawings from a point of view, but they were basing like the poses and the positions of the body from another drawing. And when they had to do like drawing on their own without having a model to copy like the pose of the body, they will do horribly. Like it wasn't like it wasn't even like the same artist, and it was like, oh, okay, he doesn't know anything about anatomy, and that was painfully obvious when they had to create something that was completely original without having some reference on the internet to base their work on.
Yeah, and references are fine. I actually encourage students and younger artists and even mature artists to use reference, because I think there's a difference between referencing an image and using that reference to create something new and directly tracing something, right? Like if you're not putting your own creative spin on whatever you're referencing, that's when you get into dangerous territories, because that's when you develop a crutch that you can only rely on like these certain images to create beautiful work. But over time, and I even do this, that's what life drawing is for, right? You go out and you have these models that you can practice anatomy with, right? And you're building a subconscious skill set so that when you are in a situation where you don't have a model in front of you or you don't have direct reference in front of you, hopefully you'll be able to take some of those lessons that you learned that are now ingrained in you to create more work. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using reference, but you just have to make sure that your reference doesn't become a crutch in your work.
Definitely. And secondly, on the other part that you speak of, the ability to pivot and to adapt, that is something like I see half of the people having that ability of not trying to get too attached to something and having the ability to modify either their art style or whatever they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
But I have met some people who are like very, very close and very, very attached of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
In the example that you just mentioned before, like when pretty much all the animation market went went to hell and everybody was starting using 3D, I know now about many cases of people who were given the opportunity, okay, like if you want to keep working here, like you need to learn 3D.
Right.
And they didn't wanted it. And pretty much I know some extreme cases that since then they haven't had like a real proper job in animation, and they still pretty much don't want to learn like digital techniques and or how to use the computer for animation or anything like that. And yeah, I don't think that taking it to the extreme is like kind of any good for anybody, but it happens. What advice would you give to people who have a hard time trying to adapt or to pivot, as you call it?
I would say you really just need to be honest with yourself. If you were a traditional animator, like in my case, I was a traditional animator, and I just didn't gel with 3D. And it's not that I have like I'm not bitter against the 3D industry or anything like that. I can appreciate the work, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to pursue as a career. So I needed to be honest with myself and think of, okay, well, what is another avenue that I could pursue where I would be happy? So if you as an artist, if you're finding difficult finding work because of the ever-changing landscape of animation and entertainment, then just have that conversation. And it may not happen immediately. You may not come to a decision within the next few months, or even in some cases the next few years, of what you want to do and what you can pivot to, because we have character design positions, we have visual development, we have well, that's all under the umbrella, but you could be a background painter, you could be a matte painter, and you can apply your skills into a plethora of fields, whether it's video games or comics or television animation and film animation. These are completely different fields that require different skill sets. So it may take a while, right, to build up the skill that you would need to get hired in that field. But if you love art and you want a career in art, then that's a conversation that you need to have with yourself of what's going to make you happy. I will also say that when I was in school, I remember talking to one of my professors, and he said, once you have a career in the art industry, you need to find a hobby. And I didn't understand what he meant initially, but now that I've had jobs in multiple industries, I totally understand, because when you go to work, and especially if you're not in a position of art director or showrunner or creator, right, you're not going to have 100% creative control over whatever you're working on at the time. So you need to have an outlet where you can express yourself 100% and fully. And you may even decide that while you're working in the industry that, hey, maybe working in animation full-time is not for me. Maybe I just need to do animation as a hobby. Maybe I just need to create comics or storybooks or something. Maybe I can feel fulfilled when I am 100% in control. And in that case, you just need to get a day job in any other field. right? So that you can be happy. That's the goal. It shouldn't be about this perception of success. I need to work for A, B, or C studio so that other people will think highly of me. You need to be happy, and that's the 100% priority.
Definitely, and especially now, like with technology and all that. For example, we started from El Salvador, which pretty much has a lot of problems, and even now, like back there in the country, there is no way for you to get like money online from the local methods, you will call it, like from the the things that they have in the country itself. But there are many other ways. So, for example, we were able to register our business in the US, and it was completely online. We didn't even put 1 feet inside the US when we did it. And thanks to that, we had like PayPal, and we have a Stripe, and now we can use like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And there, I have seen like a lot of artists who had like their day jobs, and they were working their studio and all that. And as you say, like on the side, they had the hobby, and then they took this hobby to a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or some crowdfunding or Patreon, and now they are working. For example, this series, Super Science Friends. These guys are from Canada. They have their own business doing animation commercials for companies, and their hobby was making Super Science Friends. And through Patreon, they were able to do it, and pretty much and to Kickstarter as well. And that series is here. It has been like a great success. Like they even had Neil deGrasse Tyson in one of the episodes. So I seen this way that, but at the same time, because all of this is too new. Like for many people, it is very new. If they don't have this attitude of adapting, of trying to look, as you say, not the traditional sense of success, like, oh, I need to make this movie, like I have this movie that I want to make, and Disney has to make it. Like you can actually have your own thing be done, and doing it as a hobby and through other media.
Exactly. That's such a good point. There's so many different avenues to getting your stories and your work out there. You don't need to go the traditional method. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, definitely. I try to make a big point of that because, again, like El Salvador doesn't have many resources on its own, but through internet, it's like you don't have anything blocking you. Like we started using completely free tools, even this, like a free tool from Google that is available for everybody, and a laptop, and that's it. Like, and but I understand that it's still like new for many people, and it will take time for people to realize that this hard image of success that they have doesn't have to be just that way, and that as long as things happen and you're working on the things that you want to work and you're happy, then you can make your vision happen through other media.
Exactly.
So on one hand, this is a tricky question that I like to ask, but what was something that you didn't expect at all when you started like becoming a professional in entering into this world? What was something that you didn't even think about that it will come true, that became true, and is really important in the career?
Oh, wow. I would say for me, I've realized over the years how important it is just to be proactive in your own personal career. And by proactive, I mean you need to, depending on your goal, right? If you are hoping to be in the animation industry, right? I'm in television animation. I would say the fact that I made so many friends at the college I went to, and even so many friends from the high school I went to, those people I've worked with over the years in the industry, right? And it's just so important to keep in touch with people, to be a good person, and you would think, oh well, just like being decent, that's that should be a given, but it's so important because the industry is so small. Everyone knows each other. You really can't afford to make enemies, right? And you also can't afford to sit around and wait for someone else to prop you up, right? So that means being active on social media. That means producing work, creating that is going to bring people to your respective page, whatever platform that you're on, creating work that creates a community. That's going to help you so much in your career. Even going out, when I was in comics, I went to a lot of conventions just so that my work would be out there. It's a matter of creating your own brand and being proactive in promoting that brand and promoting yourself and not being shy about walking up to people and introducing yourself. Networking seems to be such a dirty word nowadays, but and a lot of people feel really awkward by it. I feel awkward by it, but it's so important to get your face out there and to introduce yourself to people that could possibly help you in your career. And even if you just get a friend out of it at the end of the day, like you shouldn't approach a situation where, as in like, can you help me get to A, B, and C? It's like, can we establish a friendship? And if that friendship is beneficial to me down the line, fine. But if it's not, I have a good friend. Like that's the way I look at it when I try to approach people, because if you come at it as in, will you hire me? Will you hire me? Will you hire me? People are going to know. Like, so really just a matter of like, you, especially in this industry, you can't afford to be shy. You can't afford just to put your work out there and hope someone notices you, because it's so congested. It's so competitive nowadays. My mother always said, like, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you really need to not only produce amazing work, but surround yourself with people who are positive and who are going places, and foster a community that will ultimately be beneficial for you. And I guess, again, just being a decent person on top of that is going to help out.
Yeah, definitely. I have seen through many interviews that this scenario comes up, that they are looking for somebody, there is a job position open, and somebody comes up and this person is a great talent, but because they are great talent, they are kind of arrogant, if not like miles arrogant, and they never get hired. And people usually tend to go for the people who are a decent talent but are a good person and they are having fun to work with, rather than the amazing talent like that is like an arrogant and a ditch. And this is something that has I seen it popping up like in many interviews as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, the industry is very small, and everyone has a story about some person who was really rude and they didn't get the job, and careers can end like that. So it's just really important to treat others how you would expect to be treated. And if you do have a problem with somebody, talk to them. I'm a really big fan of communication, because sometimes, our humors are different, or just the way we approach scenarios, our mindsets are different. So of course you're going to come across somebody that you don't gel with 100%, but that doesn't mean that you can't work together, right? Everyone wants a peaceful, calm working environment. So if there is a problem, just talk to one another, and hopefully you can squash it and move on, because at the end of the day, it's all about creating great work. And that's what we want.
Definitely. And on the other hand, like, yeah, I think the word networking gets like a dirty kind of sense or something like that. But it is definitely important, and I think this is like a lesson that has been going on for like years and years. Who like pretty much all the sayings that our grandparents used to say, like, oh, if you are between the both, you will learn how to hold, or if you are between the bees, you're going to get something stick. But obviously these came as warnings, like if you are with bad people, something bad will get to you. But at the same time, it works as well as a good thing. And I definitely felt like many years ago, I had like I started going around some group of friends who were like really lazy and had like a lot of drama in their lives. And suddenly I realized my life is going to that direction, and I because I got into a problem, and I realized that this problem was very small, but it was creating a lot of issues for me. And then I compare it to the problems that had all the friends that I was hanging around back then, and their problems were so much crazier. And then I realized, like, oh shit, like I'm going into this direction, and I need to start making adjustments. And I started doing so, and that's when I joined like entrepreneurship community and started like getting more active into meeting people who are actually living the life that I wanted to live in and doing the kind of things that I admire and wanted to do. And in the more extreme case, I met this entrepreneur who pretty much his business model is to create businesses to sell it. So first he sits and he thinks like, okay, like I'm going to create this kind of business. Who will be a good buyer from this business? And he doesn't even have anything done, it's just a concept. Then he goes and finds out like who will be like a great millionaire who could buy this idea, to meet this guy and become friends. And then he started like building the business, and they are getting along. They are pretty much getting drunk in Paris and going through problems and things like that. But then years passes by, like 5-6 years pass by. The company is built, everything's working, and now it's just a matter of a simple call and, hey, Mike, uh, I'm trying to sell this business. Do you know anybody interested? And now it becomes like, oh yeah, like I'm interested, like I would like to buy it. And it's a whole different conversation than, okay, I have this business, who will buy it? Like, as you say, like that's when you get to the point, like, give me a job, instead of making friends with somebody for many years, and now they are somebody who might help you in the future.
Right. If it works out that this one person that you met however long ago is in a position to help you in the future, that's great. But if you go into every encounter thinking, will this person do something for me moving forward, then yeah, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot, because people's lives change so much over the years. You have no idea of predicting where a person is going to go or who a person is going to become. So yeah, you can't really write anybody off. And again, it just comes down to have common decency and respect for everyone that you meet, and not just because it could potentially come back to you, but just because that's the decent thing to do. As humans, we should just be kind to one another and help make this world a more positive place if we practice empathy. So.
Definitely. And on the other hand, what was something that you always suspected to be true that actually is true and became important in your career?
Oh, wow. I would definitely say just learning, and I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but just learning your foundations and really being strong in your foundations, because that was something all of my teachers told me growing up, and I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And lo and behold, the job that was open was a job that I wasn't proficient in, and I would have to learn to be proficient immediately. So yeah, just constantly working on your skill set, improving your skill set. That never stops. It doesn't matter if you never went to school. It doesn't matter if you graduated from schools and you've been in the industry for however many years. You can always better yourself and better your work, learn new techniques, learn new, depending on what field you're in, storytelling capabilities. It's always a matter of taking the objective view of yourself and your work and seeing where your weak points are, and then trying to elevate yourself by challenging yourself as you move forward. So that was definitely something that I secretly hoped would go away, but never did.
Definitely, there have been things like that in my path as well. uh, what has been like a failure, or better say a perceived failure, that happened to you that you thought like, oh, like this is so horrible, but set you up for success later on?
I would definitely say my perceived failure was when I first moved to LA for a job in comics, and then I got laid off, and it was a few months after that where I realized, oh, even though I signed up for a temp job at other places and I was freelancing and doing all this, it still wasn't enough to remain in LA because it was just so expensive and I would have to move. And that was really devastating for me because I took it as my career is over. If I'm not in LA, then I'm not going to be an artist, and that's just not true. I eventually found a job in North Carolina working as an animator for children's games. We were developing children's games for kids who had autism, for kids who had other learning disabilities. And that was such a great experience. I moved cross country because I was born and bred in California, right? I never really lived in another state for an extended period of time. I was in Georgia for school, but that just felt like its own bubble. Rather, I didn't consider myself really living there. I was going there for studies. And in North Carolina, I was there for about 3 years. And yeah, I met a ton of new people, many different artists in the industry. And I feel like just the fact that I was in a new place that was so out far of the perceived realm of what I wanted to do, it gave me the time to really decide, okay, well, what do you want to do? Because now I've realized, okay, I'm in a situation where I'm not at a studio that I thought would be the studio I would be at, right? I'm not working full-time in comics right now. So, and I'm still alive. Like I've survived, because you always think I feel like for me at least, I've always felt so dramatic about it because if I'm not at this point that and I haven't achieved this goal at the time that I thought that I would achieve it, that means that everything is over and everything is ruined. And here I was, not doing what I initially thought I would, and I had survived. And it really just gave me the time to recollect myself and have that conversation of, okay, well, what is it that you want to do? Because now all of the possibilities are endless. You could continue to be an independent artist. You can leave your job and move to a different state, maybe even a different country. I don't know. And eventually I was able to develop a career working in comics. And I was able to leave my full-time job and eventually move back to LA. And also living in North Carolina, it was so incredibly cheap. I mean, I was able to save up money for that return trip to LA. So, and I'm a really big champion of, I love to champion the idea of making, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Making concise risks, right? Like planned risks. So if I wanted to move back to LA, even though I didn't have a full-time job, I wanted to make sure that I had everything else in line. So I had freelance gigs lined up, right? I had money saved so I could stay there and hopefully things would work out. And because of that, because it was my second time around moving back to LA, I knew how much money I needed, right? And I knew who I would, what events I would need to go to try to make more connections. And this second time around, I would be more active on social media and have more of a presence, right? And that was the time when I was living in LA with just a prayer, basically, that I eventually got a call from DreamWorks Television to work there full time. Right. So, and I cried when I got that call because it was such a journey getting there. And I would never have gotten there if, and all of this that we've been talking about today really pulls it together because the person who initially introduced me to my future art director was someone that I worked with from college. Right. I would never have even met both of them if I wasn't at CTN, the Creative Talent Network. I'd been going to that convention for years, every November, just hoping that one day my art would be good enough to get me hired, and I would meet the right people to get hired, right? And the art director, Peter Emmerich, would never have seen my work if I wasn't at CTN having participating in a showcase at that time. So all of this stuff really just like combined, and it was the right place, right time. So that was definitely a moment where I'm like telling my whole life story, sorry. But yeah, that was definitely when I first got laid off, I thought everything was over. And then when you realize that that's just a segue, you know, that's just a misstep, now you can start planning for your success. And just being open to anything that comes your way is incredibly important. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Definitely. It is funny because, especially when one is young, like I think many of us have this perception that if this doesn't happen, it's all over. And I see in a lot of my friends dealing like with this fear of starting something because they fear the failure. And it's like, from my point of view now, it's like, not like you have to make failures. Like, as long as that failure doesn't leave you like paralytic or dead, like it's good. Like all is good as long as you're still like healthy and good, or like just if this failure doesn't leave you in millions of dollars in debt or whatever, like it's all good. Like you can always come back from that, and there is always many things that you can learn from that failure. That's pretty much it. Like
Exactly. There was this funny video that had come out recently. Well, not funny, but just it was that really beautiful speech by Will Smith, because he has an Instagram account now and a Skype account, I think, and he's just been posting silly videos every day. But there was this one video that he was posting, and he was talking about failing upward, and be sure to fail often and fail hard, because the people who are the most successful are the ones who have failed the most, because they're the ones taking risks, taking calculated risks, and learning from their failures and pushing forward. So if you really have a goal that you believe in and that you want to achieve, it's important to fail, because that's the only way you're going to get better at something, right? As artists, we fail all the time. You know, sometimes they say it takes 100 really terrible drawings to come to a beautiful drawing. That is inherently built in our careers, that we have to fail in order to make something fantastic. So we shouldn't ever be afraid of failure. It's just about it's about whether or not you're learning from your failures. If you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're still failing, there's something wrong there, right? That's the definition of insanity. So it's about learning from your failures, trying something different and moving forward, but also being open to other opportunities. Like I said, there are so many avenues where you can express your artistic talents and flourish. It's important to be open to those if you have a desire to be working professionally as an artist.
Definitely. And for example, this is something that my friends who are entrepreneurs and myself do. Like we have to go and contact clients. So for example, this week we have sent emails to 800 people. And this has like the initial email, then there is a follow-up, and then there is 2 more follow-ups to that. So pretty much we're sending like 4 emails for each people, and they are 800 contacts. And out of that, it comes like 6 people come interested, and we are setting up now like the another 800 people for tomorrow. And maybe out of these 6 interested from last week, and maybe another 5 interested from the next week, we will get like maybe 3 to 4 sales, but that will be enough. Like that will be enough to pretty much cover the whole month. And people say like, wow, like that's a small number. Like you, like I have a database right now for this month of 5,000 people, and I'm expecting to get maybe 10 sales out of that. It's like, wow, like like that's a lot of rejection. That's a lot of rejection. Yeah, but even if this tiny percentage of people say yes, like that's it. Like we have our month, and if we use good that money, then we have 2 months.
Right, right.
When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do to get back to the center?
I really enjoy going for walks and getting away from my desk. Definitely for me, it's sitting at a desk for a really long period of time. I'll start to get really fidgety. So I think it's important, especially now I've had some back pain developing because I've been sitting for so much. So I try to go to the gym. I try to go for walks and runs, do some stretches. If I'm feeling really after I get some exercise and I'm still feeling really bogged down, I'll just, I'll watch some television or a movie or show that I always found inspiring. Everyone loves Studio Ghibli films. So I'll pop that in or listen to a soundtrack. It's just, I think it's important to not put so much pressure on yourself to be creative 100% of the time if you're not feeling it, right? So unless you have a deadline coming, right? But if you feel like you're in an artist block and it's for something personal and you have the time to step away for a bit, then step away, clear your head, call up some friends. You can go out to dinner or a movie or something like that, or you can just go to sleep early. I remember a lot of bad habits that I developed early on in my career that I'm still fighting against is I tend to wake up super late and then go to bed super late. And the moment I tried switching up my sleeping schedule, especially if I was feeling really stressed out, the stress started to go away a little bit because I was creating a routine where I was up when the sun was up. I was up and could talk to people who weren't asleep yet at 2 a.m. So that helped me though. So it's all about being honest with yourself and knowing what is going to stress you out more and what you could do to release a little bit of tension, even if the whole perception of success and hard working. For me, it was, okay, well, if I'm up late working hard, that means I must be working really hard. And it's just like, okay, you're working hard, but are you working smart? So maybe go to bed and wake up early and try the work again early in the morning. And that could be that change of pace that could lead to a breakthrough for you.
Nice. Is there has been like a belief or a behavior of an habit that has helped you to improve your life a lot? It can be like general life or can be professional life, your choice.
Yeah, I would definitely say the whole exercising bit has helped out a ton. I love to go running. It clears my mind. It helps release a lot of tension from the day. If I can't go running around the neighborhood or running at the gym, I'll do exercises at home. Like I'll get on the floor and do crunchies and leg lifts and all this silly stuff with YouTube videos, right, that I found online, and just having that bit of exercise and knowing that that is it's kind of the opposite of what I do professionally helps me get reinvigorated to start a new project or start a new, thought process into what I'm working on. So that really helps me.
Nice. Is there if you have like a smart driven student that in front of you that is about to enter what we call the real world, what advice would you give to him?
Oh gosh. I would say definitely be open to anything, because the art industry as a whole has changed so much from even a decade ago, and it's continuing to change, and the landscape will continue to shift. So you need to be open to shifting as well if you want to work as a professional artist, and especially when you're first starting out. So yeah, maybe you want to get into video games, right? Like as a visual development artist for video games, but no one's hiring for that right now. We'll continue to produce work for your portfolio for video games, but if you get a call to work in a different field, don't turn that down, because that is an opportunity for you to not only have something great on your resume, but to meet a whole new network of people that could be helpful or instrumental into furthering you in your career later, right? But if you sit in your room turning down every single job opportunity that isn't that top tier dream, you're not going to get anywhere. Everyone has to start somewhere. So it's important to be open to developing different skills in different areas, taking different jobs until you get to what you want initially. And who knows, you may take that new job and realize, oh, this is actually what I really want to do. You know, give yourself that time to explore. You can do it all nowadays, especially. There's no one out there that says if you start out wanting to be a storyboard artist, you need to remain a storyboard artist for the rest of your career. You're in charge of that. So
Definitely. Like, I think coming back to the story that I told you in the beginning, I found out that for me, drawing like is my way of releasing stress. But if I take it as a job, then things do not work as well. But I also like to work in animation and all these things. So pretty much, in my case, like I never in my life thought I will go to this point. Like that was never a possibility. I didn't even thought it. But now, like, I have a business partners who they are the ones who can take like animation into a job and they love it and all that. So pretty much they can concentrate into doing just the creative, and I can take like the business side of the things. And I realized that I really love like the strategy and the logic and all that from doing all the things that are related to business, and that I really love it. So now I can help doing animations from a completely different angle that I never even knew that existed. But this is what I really like. And again, like this has been like so outside my reality for so many years that if you will ask me, let's say 6 years ago, like, will you imagine that you will be doing all this? And I will, like, hell no.
yeah.
So there is, yeah. What were you going to say, sir?
Oh, sorry. No, I was just confirming that those were good points about like remaining open and trying different things. So
Definitely. The next one is a really hard question, but I still like to ask it because it gives some interesting answers. Let's say you wake up tomorrow and you wake up in a different dimension, very similar to this, but the difference is that nobody knows about you. So pretty much you have no reputation, no connections, no anything, but you have all your skills, all your experience. You have all the tools that you need to make art, house, and all that, and $500 in your pocket. What will you do to get to this point, professionally speaking, as soon as possible?
Oh, wow. First, I would get the whole "soon as possible" out of my head, because that's just gonna drive you crazy if you're saying like, oh, I need to be a professional in the industry by the time I turn, I don't know, like one of those like 30, or which for me is in a few months. So if I woke up and I only had my art and a couple $100, first I would get a day job, so I wouldn't have to worry about bills for paying for this mysterious apartment that I'm living in. I'm a huge advocate for getting a day job that can sustain you financially. I think that's incredibly important, because that way, if all of your bills are taken care of, then you can just focus solely on your artwork. After that, I would start up a Twitter, I guess, and all of my in an Instagram, and have those platforms so that people can get to know me online. I would search out for communities, online communities I can introduce myself to and my work to, and try to make friends that way. And then going to conventions, introducing yourself to people there. Yeah, it's really just a matter of, if I want to work in the industry somewhere, I need to be proactive in my career. Everyone started out with like not too many people knowing about them, right? It's all about being proactive and actively looking for opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities when they come your way. When I first graduated, nobody knew who I was. No one really cared. So I got like jobs from friends and family, and they would recommend me to other people. And you know what? Those recommendations didn't really lead to a big call from a major studio. However, they helped pay the bills and they helped build my portfolio. So everything is useful. Unfortunately, there's no set guidelines to how to become how to become successful, how to get a job in the industry. A lot of it is being talented, being in the right place at the right time. So it's just really, you would have to be persistent and patient, because sometimes it takes a few years. Sometimes it takes a few months. There are definitely stories of kids who don't even go to college and they become incredibly successful right off the bat, and that's fantastic. So everyone's story is going to be entirely different. But if you are driving, you're just going to end up driving yourself crazy if you give yourself an arbitrary date of, I need to be successful by this period.
Yeah, definitely. When I started entering to entrepreneurship, I saw a lot of this mentality of burning the boats and pretty much quitting their jobs. So now they will have to focus entirely on their business. Pretty much, if they didn't succeed, that they will be in a shitty position. And that was like kind of the motivation. And many of my friends suffer a lot from that kind of mentality. And I took like kind of a different route, like you say. Like I had a day job, so I pretty much had to work from 7 in the night to 3 in the morning, working on the business, and definitely didn't help to get early into the job. I was getting late all the days, and I was getting discounted a lot of money because I was getting late. But then back to my house, 7, had dinner, then 7 p.m. Turn on the computer, keep working, and like soon enough, I was making enough money to make up for the money that I was losing for getting late into the job. So things started to balance, and it took me like 1.5 years or something, a little bit more maybe, to finally to get to the point where it was okay. If I want to grow my business bigger than the point that is already finding itself, I will need to dedicate more time, which I cannot dedicate if I'm in a job. But at the same time, it's still not going that good because I have a job, but the job is making the stable kind of income. So it was a hard decision because it was very balanced at the time. But just in that week, I remember there was a meeting. Pretty much, they told us like, "Oh, things were going to change in the company," and then the environment of the job became worse. So in the same week after that meeting, it was like put my resignation letter, came out, and started all into the business, and that was it. But it took a long time, as you say. Like, and in my head in the beginning, it was like, yeah, I'm going to build this business in 3 months. It didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, there are so many things out there that are going to take longer than you expect. I think that was definitely one of the valuable lessons that I learned when I was trying to become a professional was, yeah, that Cinderella story of just getting hired immediately right out of school doesn't happen for everybody. And if it doesn't, then what are you going to do? You know, and sit down and cry and not produce any more work, hoping that somebody someday will just find you and scoop you up. No, you continue to produce art. You continue to push forward, and you don't let one opportunity completely overshadow all of the other successes that you have had in the past, or overshadow or block out any other opportunity that presents itself to you, because those could be helpful with progressing your career and propelling you forward. Yeah. And especially today, because there's no such thing as real job security anymore, right? So even if you get to the studio that you've always dreamed of working for, what happens if you get laid off? What are you going to do then? What happens if there aren't any other openings in that particular field? What are you going to do? You know, so it's always a matter of I think it's important to kind of be a jack of all trades nowadays. You don't have to be completely proficient in everything, but if you have a skill set that could apply itself to this other position that is going to help you pay your bills, then go for it.
Definitely. Is there any last advice that you would like to give people who are starting out that we haven't talked about into this interview?
Ooh, okay. I would say for that's tough. There's so much to say. I would definitely suggest for people who are interested in getting into digital painting to take, and maybe don't have enough money to go to college, take advantage of online courses. Bobby Chewy has Schoolism, which was fantastic when I was getting started. I was able to participate in their little Sketchaholic. I don't know if that's still up anymore. Do you remember Sketchaholic?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when I first graduated for 2D animation and I couldn't find work, I was learning through his courses and his free online courses and the Sketchaholic interviews that were going on there. They used to do this thing where they would have a theme for the week, and you could submit your art, and whoever was being interviewed would pick your piece, or pick a piece out of everyone who submitted, and that helped introduce me to people from Pixar, which was fantastic for, again, a kid who nobody really knew about, and that really helped out. Again, it's about being proactive. So check out his site, Imagine FX, and their magazines really helped me a lot when I was still learning about digital painting. And a lot of your favorite artists nowadays will produce tutorials. So there are a lot of free, low-cost options to help you move forward. And yeah, just continue learning your foundations and making informed risks. So planning out how to get to your goal, and how you can always have a plan B, right? If that doesn't work out in the time frame that you thought it would.
Definitely. I also talk a lot about these kind of options because, again, like in my country, there are very few art schools, and the ones that exist are not that great, and they charge a lot of money. So it's like you can learn much more from the people who are actually working into this field, and it will cost you way less online. Again, like I am still trying to break that barrier to many people, because I think there is still the stigma of, oh, you learn from the internet, like that's not valuable. But it's like, no, it is really valuable.
Definitely. And again, you always have Google as well. Like that's where it goes back to references. If you're referencing an animal or a building or something like that, you have so much just at your fingertips that you can practice from. Give yourself a daily challenge. That's what I did when I first started my Tumblr, I started a daily doodle, and I would doodle every day, and I gained a following from that, right? And I made friends through that. Just making yourself aware, making yourself a platform, create a Patreon so that if people like your work, they can donate to you and help you continue to move forward in whatever dream it is that you're trying to achieve. I would also suggest reading any books about business and about starting your own independent company, being an independent artist. Those are things that are can help you promote yourself and push yourself forward that way, because there are so many instances where independent artists create their own piece and then receive success from that and eventually get hired to a company. And sometimes those companies will buy your product that you've cultivated on the internet, and you can achieve success that way. So it all depends on what you as an individual artist are trying to achieve, but definitely don't restrict yourself from looking outside of your goals, because there could be several paths that could lead you to where you want to be eventually.
Definitely. Also, you mentioned at the beginning that there is a new show that is coming up. I know that we cannot talk too much about it, but what can you tell us about this?
Sure. So the show that I'm working on at DreamWorks Television is called Hardy Street Kids. It's about Lotta, Dot, and Audrey, 3 girls from Harvey Street, and they're kind of the ambassadors of the town, and it's just about all these kids who are going on all these really cool adventures. So it's going to be on Netflix. We're not sure yet because they haven't released a release date yet, but Harvey Street Kids is coming soon. So please watch it. Me and my friends have worked so hard on it, and I hope you enjoy.
Awesome. I will. And if people want to find you online, where will be the best place to do so?
Sure. So all of my social media handles are under Lady Garland. So you can find my Instagram at Lady Garland, ladygarland.com. On Twitter, I go by my full name, Chrystin Garland, because Lady Garland was already taken. But if you just Google Lady Garland, you can find me. So.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for being here and sharing all your knowledge with us. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hustler Show. If you like it, please click the like button below and also share this interview with your friends. Until next time.